Welcome today to our webinar, Security Simplified, Making Endpoint Protection Work for Everyone. I'm Kim Maybaum, Senior Product Marketing Manager here at WatchGuard, and I'm joined today by Chris Wright, Field CTO at GigaOm.
Hey, Kim, thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us or joining us, Chris. On today's call, Chris is going to talk to you about the state of endpoint security and how things have gotten so complex that it's hurting the protection. He's also going to share some of the findings from GigaOm's latest EDR radar and what organizations need today to stay protected. And then I will close out the call with how WatchGuard helps you simplify your endpoint security and stay better protected in today's threat landscape. So from here, I'm going to pass it along to Chris.
Thank you, Kim. So there's a unfortunate reality, which is what's displayed here. The reality of the endpoint. The perimeter is it's a legacy concept in 2026. The endpoint, and maybe to an equal extent, the identity, is really the only persistent battleground. We know that 70, 80% of breaches still originate at the endpoint. As an industry, WatchGuard, vendors, we've spent billions on firewalls, edge security, yet the user device remains the most vulnerable entry point. This high percentage proves that attackers are consistently finding the path of least resistance through human error and local device vulnerabilities. Increasingly, the shift to hybrid work and cloud permanently widens the attack surface. So in 2020, when that massive shift happened, when the workforce left the office, even before then, there was already that shift taking place. COVID just accelerated it. This left behind the safety of the corporate stack, the perimeter firewalls, the DLP, the deep IPS inspections. Defending against a distributed fleet of laptops on home Wi-Fi requires a fundamental shift from network-centric to identity and device-centric security. And that's unfortunately where a lot of people are still playing catch-up. We know attacks are happening faster. AI's enabling automated attacks. Manual alert triage is just no longer sufficient. So attackers, like I said, they're using AI to automate reconnaissance. They're using it for exploitation. If we, in our heads, imagine that MITRE attack framework, we're talking about machine speed on the left side of that. So the faster they operate there, the harder it is for us as defenders to detect and respond in a timely manner. And then finally, I don't think this is new. This has been perennial. This has been a very long-standing problem. Organizations, you guys, buyers, you're overwhelmed by complexity. Security teams are drowning in data, but starving for information. If you kind of hold that for a second, think about it, go back to however you're receiving your alerts, email, PagerDuty, Slack, Teams, whatever it is. You can go through there and probably 3/4, if not more, of the alerts that you get, unless you're a really mature organization, they're probably false positives or they're just informational at best. So we have a ton of data, but we don't have a ton of information. The sheer volume of telemetry from these different systems, it creates like a fog of war, if we're going to make the cyber war analogy, where critical indicators of compromise are so easily missed. We can move on, Kim, if you want. Perfect. Thank you. So now, what are the specific challenges in endpoint security? Prevention is a binary failure mode. If your strategy doesn't assume bypass, it isn't a strategy. It's cross your fingers, hope for the best, right? We're seeing a rise in automated and AI-driven attacks. We've made it 5 minutes into this webinar and we're already talking about it. I'm sorry, but that's the reality. We had an internal meeting where I said, "Hey, what are some ideas where we can demonstrate thought leadership in the endpoint and the endpoint security domain?" And somebody immediately said, "Well, how is AI impacting this?" And I wanted to completely avoid the topic. I said, "No, that's so played out. I don't want to hear it anymore." But one of our senior leaders said, "No, you have to. AI is popular right now. AI is the talking point because it is the most significant impact that we're seeing." And we dove into it and we talked about it for a bit. And what we're seeing as a group, the field CTOs here at GigaOm, talking to hundreds of organizations and hundreds of buyers and customers, we're seeing that these polymorphic attacks, which used to be high complexity, very difficult to execute, they change their signatures in real time to evade detection. AI-driven social engineering and credential harvesting. This is now industry standard, industry scale, and for sale on the dark deep webs, whatever you want to call it, uh, traditional filters just can't catch this stuff. So take that bundle of problems and challenges, and now move on to the next one. We know from years of monitoring and years of investigative work, attackers are using living off the land uh, to hide in plain sight. They're using legitimate tools in the operating system or the application to execute their attacks. So modern threat actors, they don't always use custom malware. They might if the use case calls for it, but they're probably going to use PowerShell. They're going to use WMI. They're going to use administrative tools that are already on the system that people may already be using. So therefore, the launch and execution of those programs generally is considered benign. This makes them invisible to standard AV because their actions look like legitimate administrative work. And then finally, we have next gen AV slash EDR like tools to stop known threats, but they still kind of lack one piece where they are missing that unknown behaviors. So legacy next gen tools still rely heavily on prior knowledge. Without that deep behavioral analysis that understands the context of an action, not just the file itself, zero day exploits will continue to walk right through the front door. And finally, prevention alone isn't enough. We have detection and response now as table stakes, or it's a mandatory feature. So in in my almost 20-year career, I've learned that every preventative control will eventually fail. Every detective control will eventually fail. The mark of a mature organization isn't that they never get hit, it's how quickly they detect the breach and then contain the blast radius. We can move on, Kim. So now we're looking at how the endpoint is the new front line, which is kind of something we've already been touching on a little bit. Uh, Security tool sprawl. So looking at your entire stack of technology that you're hoping, crossing your fingers, is going to protect your organization. This is a self-inflicted denial of service attack on your own security operations. So if we know that the average organization uses 40, 45, 50 security tools, but we also know that 71% say this siloed approach increases risk. Managing 45 different consoles creates context switching fatigue. Every tool added is another potential point of configuration error and another database that doesn't talk to the others. You have siloed information, lacking the contextual linking that makes those alerts and makes the actions that you're going to take more valuable, higher impact. Second, we know that disconnected systems lead to delayed response times. So when your security operations center, maybe it's just a 1 or 2 person team, when they get that alert, analysts shouldn't have to then play data detective across 5, 6, 7 different tabs to reconstruct an attack timeline. Every minute spent manually correlating data is a minute the attacker has to move laterally, to execute on their game plan, to move the data, to encrypt the data, whatever the case may be. Um, let's take a look here. I think we can move on to the next slide, Kim. Ah, the poll. Okay. Did you want to take over, Kim?
Sure, happy to do so. Liz,
Thank
can
you.
we go ahead and pop up the poll question? So we are curious, what describes your organization's current endpoint protection? Are you using some legacy AV tools? Do you have an EDR light or limited detection, full EDR, or full EDR with some MDR or managed EDR attached? Or are you not sure? I don't know. What do you think, Chris? What do you think the audience is going to have?
I have a favorite horse in this race. Then I have the one that's most likely.
All right.
I'm going to say my favorite's going to be the MDR, obviously.
Mhm.
I don't care unless you're a government organization, you're probably understaffed, underskilled, and overwhelmed. But I think majority is probably going to land in that full EDR deployed.
Yeah, looks like your MDR might be the horse that's winning the race, Chris. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pop it to the next slide. Let the results tinker in for a few more seconds. Oof. So can we
All right.
see the poll results? So it looks like we had more people, or the majority of people did have some MDR or managed EDR in place. You were right. Good for you guys.
Very
Right.
good for you guys. I'm I'm happy that MDR is out there. I think everyone needs a little bit of help.
Absolutely. All right, Chris, you want to keep going?
Yeah. So as we touched on and kind of built on, and I'm gonna wrap up here. Um, this overlapping coverage, it causes alert fatigue, data silo, slow investigation. We've touched on that. Human bandwidth is stretched way too thin. So there's, I think everyone knows at this point in time, there's a global shortage of cybersecurity talent. You can take that with a grain of salt because I think everybody who's watching this has probably applied to a job where they're highly qualified for, and they either hear nothing back or they get told, "No, you're not quite what we're looking for," and you're thinking, how does this even make any sense? I know that you need talent. I have that talent. Why aren't you, taking me? That's a whole nother rant for another time, though. So when you're facing this global cybersecurity talent shortage, obviously MDR is one potential path, but the reality is you're expecting a small team to master dozens of complex interfaces. Like I said, the 40, 50, 60 security tools. That's unrealistic. It leads to burnout, which is a major security risk in and of itself. We can move on to the next one if you want. So as we touched on a little bit here, um, what happens when you have two similar security systems and they both alert on essentially the same security event? You have an overlap in coverage. One may lend a little bit more information on if we're talking about endpoints specifically. Maybe it tells you a little bit more about file paths, execution time, network behaviors. The other, maybe it identifies workloads that security event involved. Maybe it can tell you what DNS calls were made, what systems inside of your organization it contacted, what was attempted. You have a Venn diagram, overlay those in your head, but that's all manual. You're having to do this. You have to apply expertise that you hopefully have to determine what is the most likely next step. How can I short circuit this attack? What can I do to reduce that blast radius? Really, you should be looking for something that doesn't have you doing that Venn diagram mentally. You want to avoid the mental gymnastics whenever possible. Disconnected systems, if they are independent silos, like we've talked about before, they can literally produce the same alert, doubling your alert volume, but reducing the fidelity of that alert channel, however you want to think of it: PagerDuty, Slack, Teams, email, phone calls. You're adding noise when you really want to be adding signal. As we talked about human bandwidth, there's just not enough of us to go around. I'll say that all day, every day. Everyone that's here watching, Kim, everybody else, whether you're in tech, you're not in tech, if you're in security operations, you need another one of you to get all your tasks done. You don't need a system that's telling you, hey, there's something really bad going on. By the way, here's an extra 3 hours of work that you didn't plan on. So better get started. That's essentially what happens when you have a system that is incomplete in its understanding, lacking context, but tells you something bad might have happened. And finally, too many moving parts. That's just a recipe for disaster. Complexity adds risk. We can move on if you want, Kim. Thank you. So as we're talking about integrated platforms, I think for a lot of people, when you start thinking of this, you are probably picturing something like maybe your service desk. Could be ServiceNow, Jira, Confluence, whatever you're using, um, acting as your repository of your single source of truth. Or maybe you're thinking, hey, this is what my SIEM is for. We use Splunk or QRadar or Sentinel One or whatever the case is. All that data is going there. That's my integrated platform. But it's not unless you've applied that expertise and built it out. Splunk is a notoriously uh, it's an amazing system. It is probably the coolest Swiss Army knife in the tech world. I don't know of anything else other than a programming language that is so capable. But like a programming language, it's only as capable as the operators that are using it. Splunk is exactly what you put in is what you get out. So garbage in, garbage out. That applies to a lot of the seams. That applies to your service desk. It's only as good as you make it. Unfortunately, human bandwidth. We don't have the time to make it as good as we need it to be. You really need something that you can just take, drop in, and on day one or day 30, whenever it's fully deployed, you're able to extract that value. You're able to get that context. You're able to improve your security operations by acting faster, by understanding more, and just eliminating that manual effort like we've talked about. Uh, Cloud native management. This is one that I think so many organizations are still they're uncomfortable with. They want full control of their data. They want that data governance. They want to know, hey, if we're an AWS shop, our data is in our AWS environment. We ultimately control egress and ingress. We control the identities that can access these systems. We have complete and total control over it. Unfortunately, that comes with a massive overhead. The massive overhead is now you are maintaining and operating all of those independent systems that interact with your data. You're responsible for the identity management. You're responsible for the network filtering rules. You're responsible for provisioning and operating storage and compute and bandwidth. You're responsible for all of that. That cost is real, and I think it's often underestimated. There's a significant amount of overhead that goes into that, and that overhead produces risk as well. So keeping that in mind when you're comparing, do we want to self-host or do we want something that we can just connect to and understand with some sort of attestation or assurance that yes, they will be guardians of our data, they will be guardians of our security. I think if most organizations look at it through that lens, they will realize the benefits gained from cloud native management far outweigh the risks of self operating. And then finally, simpler does not always equal less capable. That's really important. Sometimes simpler just means it's more mature and it's able to, I don't want to say automagically, but automagically make things happen for you that you may not have even considered.
Automatically is a totally appropriate word. So thank you, Chris, for that. We're going to jump to our next polling question, which is, what is your biggest concern when it comes to endpoint security today? So we're looking at, is it ransomware, phishing, social engineering, lateral movement, inside threats, or just general alert fatigue? As Chris was saying, a lot of people struggle with all their siloed tools and they're overworked and they don't have enough teams. So, is it just alert fatigue and operational complexity? Let's see what people say.
I'm surprised ransomware took off so fast.
Oh,
But
yeah, looks like it might be a two-person race today. Other
yeah,
horses aren't even entering yet. Oh, no, now they're going. Now they're coming
I,
in.
I think lateral movement is appropriately categorized with the least.
Yep.
I don't think most organizations are able to concern themselves with that. Ransomware, phishing, definitely one and two.
Yeah, it looks like it. All right, I'll give it a few more seconds, see if anybody else wants to add their perspective. Go ahead. All right, yeah, ransomware. Over 50%. Very cool. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move to the next slide. Go ahead, Chris.
All right. Let's see. Where did I take off here? So we have. Oh, yeah, this is probably a really good time. Let's talk about what we do here at GigaOm. Let's introduce the approach and why what you see on the screen is fundamentally different than what you see if you look at other analyst firms graphics where they try to chart out the technology landscape. So myself and every other analyst and field CTO here at GigaOm, we are practitioners. We were, in my case, practitioners, hands on keyboard implementers. We've been the decision makers, making buying decisions, trying to choose the right technology for the organization that we're in. What that means for you as somebody who's going to potentially read the GigaOm radar report, what you see here, you're consuming this information, is we've had those late nights, we've made those poor decisions, we've bought the wrong things, maybe we've bought the right things. All of that information gets distilled down, and it's wisdom. It's really what it comes down to. We take that wisdom and we apply it to the analysis of the market. In this case, we're talking about EDR. We take that analysis and we do our very best to produce a rigorous, reviewed, well understood report. And the result of that report is the mathematical calculations, which chart out the radar graphic. Now, it's really important to understand first, unlike a very popular graphic, which is up and to the right is always best, you can completely throw away that paradigm. That does not exist on the radar graphic. Down and to the left, up and to the left, down and to the right can be an ideal solution. We're not trying to identify the single best EDR solution on this graphic. What we're trying to do is identify the buyer's persona. So, what matters to you? What are the important features to you? And then take that persona and apply it to the radar and say, these are the two, the three, the four vendors that I need to have on my short list when I'm making a buying decision. Instead of surveying 15 vendors or 10 vendors and trying to work through that, we can tell you if this specific feature is important to you. These are the vendors that do that really, really well. And if you need cloud hosted, then these are the vendors that do that. Creates that short list, makes your job much easier to make a better buying decision. So as you can see here, EDR adoption continues to grow. It's I'll call it a mature technology in a good way. There's IBM produces mature technologies that I think we're probably familiar with, and mature used in that frame is not very, very generous. But the way I'm describing EDR as mature is it's been around, it's been tuned, it's been refined. The buyers have really led the development of this technology, not the other way around. The vendors aren't creating features with no impact, no practical use. Instead, the growth of this market is one where the control of feature development is really in the buyer's hands. And because of that, EDR has continued to grow. It hasn't been replaced. And then if you notice, the importance of behavioral detection has only grown. If we're comparing, and I'm combining terms here, which I've already done, legacy, air quotes, next gen AV, because that's really what it is. It's now legacy technology to EDR. That's one of the key differentiators is the understanding, the context. You can have a static rule that fires from a next gen AV, but it's lacking context. Maybe that's a typical administrative action on a second Tuesday of the month when they're trying to fix a patch, whatever the case may be. It's that behavioral understanding that really separates EDR from your legacy AV systems. Then there is a shift towards unified platforms. So combining what we used to consider endpoint protection, EPP, plus EDR. Um, and this isn't too unique to EDR. We're seeing this in the cloud security space. We had cloud security posture management, which was just concerned about your infrastructure. Then we had workload security, which was only concerned about your workload security. Then we have more recently identity security, KIM. Now we're combining all of these together, and it's a CNAPP solution. So that's what you're seeing here: the unification of very important. I don't want to say correlated, but the word's escaping me right now. Fill in the blank. They're complementary. There it is. They're very complementary feature sets, and that's exactly what EPP and EDR has done here. EPP was really, really good at controlling and monitoring the behavior on the endpoint. EDR added in that detection and response capabilities. Marry those together, you now have an even better approach. And of course, speed and automation. Yes, that does equal better outcomes. As we talked about before, taking the manual efforts that you have of creating that mental Venn diagram, correlating alerts, weeding out the good info, throwing away the bad info, and then combining those together to determine what is actually happening, what's the next step. That takes time. It's expensive. Human bandwidth is very expensive. We are really good at identifying anomalous patterns. We are really good at picking the needle out of the haystack from far away. We are not really good at triaging the same type of alerts with low fidelity hour after hour, day after day. That will burn people out. You'll see your detection rates plummet over time. Or the inverse of that is if you have a good system that does the correlation for you, you'll see your detection rates and your resolution rates increase over time. So long story short, while the market is maturing, like that last line there says, there are still gaps that remain. There's still more evolution to be had. So if we talk about what we need today, true detection and response, obviously, not just AV. You don't need another alert telling you something bad's happening, or maybe it's a little more specific. You don't need another alert that's telling you, hey, this matches a potential ransomware. You need a system that is able to jump in and stop process. You need a system that's able to then go and check, hey, do you have backups of this endpoint? Does this, you know, does this endpoint have some sort of ransomware recovery? You need it to integrate with your service desk. You need it to create tickets. Let your service desk do what it's good at. Assign task ownership. Get the ball rolling. You don't need to be manually triaging for 45 minutes trying to figure out what the next steps are. That should all just happen ahead of time. Proactive controls absolutely do reduce the attack surface. Finding your misconfigurations, finding your outdated software, finding your missing patches, that is probably your one, two, three when it comes to reducing the area of attack for the modern attacker. If we go back and we look at SANS, I think they still produce it. They're top 20. Number one, number two, hardware secure or hardware inventory, software inventory. Why were those so important? Because you have to understand, you have to know what's out there. How does that play into this? When we're talking about proactive controls, if you don't have an understanding of your endpoint, if you don't understand its OS level, its OS specific configuration, the applications that are installed on it, you're in a very bad spot. You're blind to the potential risks that are out there. We've talked about this a little bit as well already, the consolidation or however you want to phrase it, minimizing tool sprawl, keeping the silos to a minimum. Um, Obviously, integrations empower the world now. Simplified workflows, the same idea. You don't need to, was really a two-parter. You shouldn't be designing workflows for one. You should have some out of the box ready to go. Just, hey, this is happening on the back end. And so you're aware this is what it does. Uh, but two, you shouldn't be doing the manual work anymore. I think we sometimes, as practitioners, fall into the I am confident in what I'm doing. I do it well. I'm going to go and do it. You don't realize you're doing a lot of manual work. This should be offloaded at some point. More AI automation for better efficiency, kind of building on what I was just talking about there. We have, depending on the technology, AI is a very broad term, it's a big umbrella. You have machine learning, you have computer vision, you have large language models, you have a variety of capabilities there. How the EDR vendors are implementing them varies. Not only do some have a smattering of those AI technologies, but they're going to be implemented differently. So as you are surveying the solutions that you're most interested in, it's really important to A, nail down what AI technology are we actually talking about, and B, what is the use case that it's solving for? Is it a assistant in the SOC where it's able to give your tier one SOC operators tier two, tier three insights or wisdom? Is it able to consolidate information for them and recommend here's what might be happening? Or is it the other side of it where it's able to correlate based on data, a large data set? It's able to correlate disparate alerts into one and string them together into sort of an attack story or some sort of visualization that helps you understand the complete life cycle of the attack and where you're at in it. And really what it boils down to is, like that last bullet point there says, you're trying to make security accessible for all skill levels because again, that skills gap is a real problem.
That's great, Chris. Thank you. So we are going to pop on to one more poll question. Actually, we have two more, but this is our next one. So how much automation or AI does your endpoint security use today? Ooh, a good one, right, Chris? Are you
Yeah,
extensively using AI and automation? Do you have some, little? Maybe you don't know. But I am curious because, as Chris was saying, the automation in AI really can help the alert fatigue. It can make things a lot easier for you, make it
this
more
is
straightforward.
this poll asked even 6 months ago would be very different, and I expect the results to be very different in 6 months from now.
That's true.
Um,
That's true.
it's been a rapid adoption, not just EDR, but across the board in tech. Everyone's trying to find a way to jump on the AI bandwagon, and as buyers, it's your job to make sure you're not buying hype.
100%. Yep. All right. Yeah, we're looking like most people are using some or little, but not extensive. All right. And as Chris said, I'm sure that will change 6 months from now. Very cool. Thank you guys. Moving on. Timely topic, Chris.
Yes. All right. So we are talking about the integration side of the house. So when I initially got into security operations, everything was siloed. We had vulnerability scanner data. We had it wasn't even EDR, it was AV. We had our DLP engines. We had our firewalls. And it was so segmented, so siloed that I think each of those were owned by different teams. And then it was really, up to the teams to work together and correlate. You can imagine how ineffective and how painfully slow that was. Automation is really the only way to solve that cybersecurity skills gap without hiring a single person. So what I mean by that is integration and correlation across domains that eliminates those blind spots. Attackers hide in the gaps between tools. They understand the capabilities of the EDR, of the EPP, of the firewall. They know where those coverages overlap, and they also know where they don't. So by correlating endpoint data with network and identity telemetry, you can track an attacker as they move across different layers of your environment. Getting that all under, I won't even say it. I think I have to though, because there's no better way to describe it. A single pane of glass. Sorry. Um, Getting it out of the silo, talking about that contextualization, that is a very effective method. We also know that AI reduces manual investigations and false positives. It's an excellent technology at pattern recognition. It can filter out noise of normal administrative behavior, ensuring that when an analyst finally gets an alert, it's actually high fidelity. It's going to be worth their time to perform the investigative steps. And finally, of course, automation speeds things up. That speeds up triage. It speeds up containment. It speeds up resolution. You know what you do when you have more time? Well, you're able to mature your program. You're able to quantify. You're able to start measuring effectiveness. And then what do you do when you can measure effectiveness? When you can quantify? Well, now you can start reporting. Now your security team, maybe you as an individual in the security team, you're able to lend metrics that go up the chain and they're able to be presented, whatever the case may be, maybe at the board level, maybe at the executive level. But now you're actually able to say, we can quantifiably say, we've reduced, we've addressed 45% more breaches this quarter than last quarter because of this investment or because of this technology or because of this process change. Whereas before, you'll just say, I don't know, my team's overwhelmed. We need more heads. I think we can move on to the next one if you want, Kim. Sorry, didn't even notice that jumped. So endpoint security that works. What are we talking about? Um, I think everyone has had some experience with a program that either you hired into an organization and they're like, "Hey, this is going to be your tool. This is you're going to own this. You're going to be the SME on it." And you're excited at first. And then you sit down and after maybe 20 minutes, maybe a week, maybe a month, there's something that pops up. For me, it was I won't name the vendor, but it was maybe 5 to 6 years ago and the UI for the solution felt very much like it was written for Windows 95. It had gray boxes with radio buttons and check boxes. It loaded very slowly. It was extremely difficult to use. And it was unfortunately what that vendor released at their time. It was cutting edge for them. And it was what I had to use. It was a huge usability hurdle. It definitely impacted my ability to do work. So when we talk about usability, it is just as important as capability. This was a highly capable solution, but it was so god awful hard to use. I didn't want it. I actually, within 6 months of being there, I said, we need to change. This is so bad. We need to go to something else. The second one here, solutions must work for small and mid-sized teams. So when we're surveying technologies, that is for me front and center. My background is one from small teams. I've worked in very large organizations. I've worked at Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase. I've worked at the second largest security vendor. I won't name a name, but I've also worked in a team where I am the only security person. Multiple times, I've been either the first security hire or the only person tasked with security jobs. I've also worked in teams where I'm one of 3 or 4 or 5 people. And I understand that the requirements for the people who are in those small teams or those mid-sized teams are going to be wildly different. You don't need the most cutting-edge forensic analysis tooling. You need something that can say with confidence and give you confidence, hey, something bad happened. Here's likely next steps, and here's why. You don't need to then go and do raw memory analysis. That's not something any smaller mid-sized team needs to be concerned with. If that is coming up from your leadership, hire it out, find a contractor, pick a good organization to do that. Don't do that yourself. Don't select an EDR solution just because it's giving you the highly advanced forensic analysis capabilities that you've read about on Reddit or you've seen a YouTube video on. That's a fool's errand. It's a distraction. It sounds really good on paper, but then you get into it and you realize once I get this info, what am I going to do with it? I have no idea. So set that aside. Don't worry about that. And then automation, as we've talked about, that bridges the skills gap, whether that's through some sort of implementation of AI, where it can upskill your tier one and enable them to behave and act in a tier two while they learn and maybe they become a tier two. And then you're able to upskill them again and they become a tier three. It a good automation, whether it's AI powered or not, should really be upskilling your team. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. And then, as always, uh, if you're leadership and you're on this call, I'm sorry, I'm gonna let a little secret out here. Leaders really don't care about technical capabilities. They don't care at all. They just want to know what is the outcome going to be. Can we get what we need to do for this quarter, for this year? What business driver does this align with? Does it help us achieve and maintain our SOC 2? Does it help us grow our business? Does it reduce our spend? Does it increase revenue? That's the outcome that they're looking for. They don't care where it comes from. As long as it's as effective, ticks the boxes, green money, brown money, wherever it's coming from, they just want the outcome at the end of the day. Thank you, Kim. So yes, complexity is not a strength. I will actually state complexity is usually the killer of effectiveness. So I'll go ahead and publicly declare that as somebody who loves a simple but not underwhelming solution. Integrations and automations, yes, that makes you more efficient. That also makes you more resilient. I have good days. I have bad days, Kim. I'm sure you're no different. We have days where we're just on fire and we're doing it all. And then we have days where you just want to crawl back into bed and go to sleep. Your automations don't have that variability. And because of that, they will make you more resilient. And simpler tools, they do outperform in real use. Um, like I said, the example, and this is deep diving on the memory forensics and those capabilities and the collection of forensic data. That's awesome. Somebody spent a lot of time building that capability, and it's really cool for those who need it. But the slice of the security operations pie of the people who actually need that is very, very small. So when you're surveying your EDRs, when you're trying to make a buying decision, always keep in mind, especially as a small and mid-sized team, the simplest to use, the simplest to deploy, and simplest to operate solution, it should definitely be in your top three. And then, yeah, finally, I will agree with this all day. Organizations do still need an EDR. It's not going away. It's not getting sunset. It's not getting combined into something else.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. That was really great information. So I'm going to take it away from here. So just to kind of echo what Chris has been saying, a lot of what we've been hearing is, endpoints are really critical to your networks, but they're key targets, and you really have to take steps to secure them. And the security tools you find should help improve your security, and reduce complexity, not overwhelm you with alerts. You shouldn't be working in the silos. You need to have something that gives you effective protection that goes beyond traditional prevention. So as Chris said, the AV tools were great years ago, but today you really need a detection and response tool. You really want to look for a tool that has the automation and the AI. Utilizing that will help you reduce the noise. It'll make the task less burdensome for your team, reducing the workload and letting you prioritize other things to do. And as Chris mentioned as well, a lot of people today are working in silos. How many of you have 2, 3 tools you have to manage? You have to get data from each of them. You have to pull them together, consolidate it, and then figure out what's the real alert, what's the highest priority. And a unified approach delivers stronger security with less effort. It makes it simpler to manage. And again, simplification doesn't mean you've got less security. It's just removing complexity, which strengthens your protection. And it's funny because at WatchGuard, a lot of people know us as a firewall company, but our endpoint security tool is actually really strong. We've got a lot of customers that have been loyal to us for years because once they get it, they understand it's simple. It's got the automation that you need to protect yourself better. It's got a lot of tools that work together with the rest of our firewalls and other tools so that you can consolidate your information. They complement each other, as Chris was saying, and it's a great technology stack. So for those of you that aren't as familiar with WatchGuard Endpoint Security, we start with a prevention approach. So if you haven't heard of our Zero Trust application service, it's It's a really cool feature. So what it does is it classifies 100% of all applications before they execute. So if anything comes through that's malicious or even unknown, it blocks them, it stops them. So it's stopping zero-day attacks before they have a chance to get into your networks and execute. In addition to that, we focus heavily on attack surface reduction. Well, why? Because if you have a teeny tiny attack surface, you have a teeny tiny chance of a threat sneaking through there. So that's thinking things like, preventing misuse of trusted tools or discovering unmanaged endpoints. We also have a host of prevention controls in place. Things like device firewall, lateral movement containment, which apparently is not as big of a concern. But either way, you want to contain it, you want to stop it from spreading. Things like the spreads from browsers, from applications, USBs. These are all important techniques to just prevent an attack from coming through. And WatchGuard focuses on that with their endpoint security. But again, as Chris said, prevention is no longer enough. So alongside our prevention controls, we have, of course, detection and response. And this includes our AI-driven incident detection, as well as threat hunting and investigation. So as Chris was saying, you want the tools, the attack timelines, the graphs, the root cause. You want to understand where the attack came in, how it got through. Look at all these features, and then you can close up these gaps so that attacks are not going to be able to get through in that same form again. And of course, alongside that, we also have automated remediation. So if something does get through, automatic threat containment and cleanup. That's key. That means you're not worried at 2 a.m. when a threat maybe sneaks through. Your system's got it, it's contained it, and if need be, we can isolate your endpoints in your network until you can go in, clean it up, figure it out, and reset it. So one other thing that we heard Chris talk a lot about is AI. So I know all EDR tools say they use automation, say they use AI, but the way that WatchGuard does it is really unique, and it's something we call a continuous self-learning AI loop. So what this means is if you think of the cloud, it's your super brain of the architecture. It's got all the heavy thinking going on here, and it passes things along to your endpoints, which are the reflexes. So the cloud makes decisions. That is classifying every execution on the endpoint. And it's also training models in the cloud. So it's taking data from the real world and threat intelligence from multiple sources, and it's compiling all of this, and it's learning. And then it's taking that information and it's distilling it down into lightweight versions that is then shipped off to every endpoint. So then your endpoints can make fast decisions locally with minimal performance impact while offline. I don't know about you, Chris, but I know that a lot of tools, while you're offline, they may not be protection. They may be sleeping, taking their rest. But here at WatchGuard, if you're offline, we're still protecting you. And over time, this continues to improve. This conversation, it's kind of like, again, think of a young child as they learn and grow over time. Their brain is learning new skills. It's passing it along to the body, and it's a continuous cycle. And that is the same here with our continuous self-learning AI. The telemetry and the outcomes flow back into the cloud. Cloud decision-making and analytics improve over time, as does the next generation of endpoint models. And then for our customers today, what they get is protection that keeps getting faster and smarter over time. So we do have one last polling question. And this is going to be talking about how well-resourced your team is to manage endpoint security. Are you fully staffed, adequately staffed? Do you have a small team or no dedicated team? Liz, are we able to pop up that? There it goes. Chris, thoughts on what we're going to see here?
Oh, I'm not surprised smaller lean has jumped out. That is the majority of organizations that I've worked with or worked in.
Yep, same indeed.
So if I think the last one I worked with, they had a 200 headcount. Probably 90 were engineers, so developers in some capacity. And then sales, marketing, administrative roles like HR and stuff. And they had 4 security focused roles.
Yep, that sounds about right. All right, well, it looks like over 50% is saying small or lean team. And similar to Chris, I can't say I'm too surprised with this result. This is really what WatchGuard is here for, to help those teams that are small and resource thinned, resource constrained, do more with less. Because regardless of how well staffed you are, everybody wants to improve processes and reduce workload. That's just a win. And with that being said, I wanted to bring up a really cool example of one of our partners, AMA Networks, who actually might be on the call with us today. They joined with WatchGuard years ago, and what they're here to do, what we're here to help them with, I should say, is to simplify their security, improve their security, and also reduce their day-to-day operations, take away some of that burden. And since they've been on WatchGuard, they've had 30 to 40% faster deployments with our cloud. That means they're getting their users and their devices up quicker. And that means people are protected sooner. They've got quicker threat detection and containment, which reduces downtime and risk. Super critical. They save over 60 hours on license administration every year. And that means their team can do higher value work, focus on other priorities, and they don't have to do the manual, tedious maintenance of license administration. And also a 25% reduction in support volume, thanks to our automation and our unified management. And one thing I actually want to call it in particular is the quote on the side. So I was speaking with Amir, the CEO at AMA, and one of the things he mentioned is that he's had 0 major breaches or ransomware incidents among fully WatchGuard protected clients. And that to me is amazing. You know, that's exactly what we strive for, to keep you protected. His team doesn't have to stress about it. They know that they're protected. They can sleep at night knowing that if something comes off at 2 a.m., you know, it's going to be blocked automatically. So that is why we're here to help the small and medium teams that don't have a dedicated security staff or have a very lean staff do more with less, get more time back in their day to do other priorities and also still be confident in their security. So just to kind of sum all of that up, if Amir's perspective wasn't enough, why WatchGuard endpoint security? Well, we're a leader in endpoint security. You just saw the GigaOm results. We've also recently participated in the MITRE ER7 evaluation. And WatchGuard was up there with the best of the best, with the CrowdStrikes and the Defenders, everybody that is anybody that's common and popular in the industry. You know, we can compete against on our technology. We may not have the name in the market, but we've got the technology to back it up. That's why customers stick with us for 15, 20 years. They are very confident in WatchGuard endpoint security.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, Kim, from the GigaOm perspective, you know, I have a small team background, so I've worked with WatchGuard technologies as a practitioner. I've worked with a variety of other technologies. This EDR capability, your depth of capability, isn't new. You guys have been in our EDR radars for a few years and have been a clear, you know, I have to be careful with my words because I don't want to overlap with any of our verbiage, but it's been clear that it could be a good choice for the right teams.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I appreciate that. And we have been very excited with how we've performed. And we are confident when we go into these reports like yours that we can perform with the biggest and the best. And the way we like to say is that we offer the enterprise grade protection without that cost or complexity. You know, a lot of tools in the market, you either have to pay for the highest tiers to get it or you need a dedicated security team. And as we just saw in the last poll, a lot of you guys don't have that. So how do you do it? You find a tool that's built specifically for SMBs. You know, we're built for those small and medium businesses. We understand your challenges and we're here to support you guys and to make sure you're confident without having to pay for all those add-ons or for those high teams that you can't necessarily provide. And of course, how do we do that? As Chris said, AI-powered prevention, detection, and automated response. AI automation. We could say it over and over again. It's here, it's making things better, and it's going to continue to improve. And also, as Chris was saying, you know, a lot of people are working in silos. We offer a unified platform, not just for our endpoint, but you can connect your firewalls, your network detection and response, or even your MDR. If you need the services, we have an MDR team that will support our endpoint. And so with the native integrations in our platform, it's all in one place. You've got strong operational efficiency, you've got strong security, and you've got one tool to manage it all. And so I'm going to just sum up kind of everything on the webinar before we get to our questions. But as Chris and I have been talking about today, you know, strong security doesn't need to be complicated. In fact, it shouldn't be complicated. Every organization deserves and needs a true EDR tool that they can manage, that they can afford, and that they can be confident in. It shouldn't be a luxury. It shouldn't be expensive. It just should be what we get. You know, that's what's needed today to protect you in this threat landscape. Security tools shouldn't overwhelm you. They should empower you. They should make your life easier, not harder. And a lot of tools out there are very complicated, or you know, you start at one level and find out it doesn't have what you need, and you have to upgrade to 3 or 4 more tiers just to get that protection. You know, it shouldn't be expensive. It shouldn't be exclusive. It should just be, again, available to everyone. And WatchGuard is committed to this. We're committed to delivering advanced security that's simple, accessible, and affordable for everybody. Because again, modern security shouldn't be complicated or exclusive. It just should be available and achievable for everyone. So thank you for joining us all. And now we're going to open it up to any questions, unless Chris, you got any closing comments you want to add?
Yeah, I'm ready to see what's out there.
All right, looks like we got a couple of questions popping in. And I'm going to just say, go ahead and please continue to ask questions as well as we're going through. So Chris, let's see, we're going to go for this first one. Where do you most often see complexity creates blind spots or problems for security teams?
So I have one or two that come to mind. The integration gap, uh, which leads to then context switching, which is the literal manifestation of jumping between tabs between different security tools, trying to figure things out. We know blind spots occur most often in the silence between tools. When an alert jumps, it fires. Analysts then have to jump between five different consoles, piece together the attack story or the attack life cycle, whatever the case may be. You can easily lose that thread of the attack. So complexity isn't just having too many tools, it's the mental tax of trying to correlate all the different data manually, which then leads to human error and delayed response. Um, the other side of this is kind of related. When you have a bunch of overlapping tools that fire for the same event, that creates a flood of noise. You don't care about the noise, you just want the signal. So eventually, analysts accidentally or intentionally start tuning out or ignoring alerts. That's a blind spot that multiple tools can't fix. It's the human that couldn't find the needle in the haystack of redundant notifications.
Yep, that makes sense. The boy who cried wolf. You do it too many times, you start ignoring it, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Lesson we all learned years ago, and it continues to be true. All right, another question. From what you're seeing in the market, what's the biggest misconception organizations still have about endpoint protection today?
I feel like this is kind of like when you're shopping for a car. It's really easy to be dazzled by, I think Audi makes it. Audi has a car where it has LED headlights and they can um, selectively dim and block out the light so it doesn't go into oncoming traffic. It doesn't go into the driver of a car coming at you. That's really cool. But what do you get at the end of the day? Well, like, what's your actual improvement in your driving experience or your safety? Um, that's really flashy. It catches your eye. Boy, that looks cool in a demo. The same thing happens when you're talking about security tooling. There's this complexity equals security mindset. And it should be the complete opposite. Complexity does not equal security. Complexity often equals friction. It equals the opportunity to make mistakes, which both of those increase risk.
Absolutely. Like we said, simplify, simplify, and simplify. One person said a lot of companies feel covered if they just have antivirus or some form of EDR. What gaps might they not realize exist? I think we covered this a bit, but maybe there's a little bit more we can expand on.
Yeah. So one area where AV is really bad is living off the land. Um, Living off the land techniques, which like we talked about, that's using the operating system's built-in administrative tooling or native scripting languages to perform malicious actions. Many AV EDR-like tools, they're great at catching malicious files, but they struggle when it comes to understanding malicious behavior using legitimate tools like PowerShell or on Windows WMI. Attackers aren't always bringing malware. They're not going to download a binary that you can hope to catch through your firewall or hope that it lands and you can hash it, compare it. That doesn't happen anymore, not as often as it used to. So they're using your own administrative tools against you, which standard AV won't flag as malicious most of the time. The other part of this is that lack of cross domain correlation. So having an EDR and an endpoint is good, but if it doesn't talk to your identity or your network, you're missing the opportunity to detect lateral movement, which is an item that you've brought up. So an attacker might bypass the endpoint control and get caught when their behavior is correlated with suspicious login or a spike in network bandwidth. Gaps that isolated tools they will miss.
Just a kind of follow up for me, what do you think if there are organizations on today that are still on AV tools? What do you recommend for them? Like, how do they take the steps to move beyond? I know a lot of people, you kind of said it yourself, they're in their tools, they're using it day to day. They don't want to change the standard, especially if they've been using it for 10, 15 years. I mean, what do you recommend for them to try to continue on and kind of get outside their bubble, so to speak? And
Yeah. So anytime you're talking about change and security tooling, there's risks of action. If we change and something happens, even if it's not the tool's fault later on, I'm still responsible for that. It could look like I made a poor decision, but then there's also the risk of inaction. If something happens and I had the opportunity to improve our security posture, then it looks bad. So it's you feel like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. With EDR in particular, that's less of a concern because, like I've said before, it's a very mature technology. So if you're truly on next gen AV still, or if you're using an older EPP, um, there's relatively low risk in moving to an EDR. And then if you're looking for some sort of tactical guidance, I would do this like most other endpoint related deployments. Pick a pilot group, put the security team in it, maybe some security adjacent teams, put them in the pilot group, do the deployment, and then sit back and watch and measure and see, is friction reduced? Do you have lower ticket volume because the AV's killing legitimate administrative processes? Are you identifying more malicious threats? Sit back and actually take a look at it. And at the end of whatever period, 30 days maybe, take that and compare it to where you're at now. That is an easy way to build the case to be like, okay, we've done this demo, we've done the proof of concept, people are liking it, we have better visibility. Let's now roll this out more broadly.
Yeah, I love that. And if you guys haven't tried WatchGuard's Endpoint solutions yet, we do usually can do some pilots and programs so you can get in and see, like Chris says, see the difference it makes, understand the value it brings and how you can justify that to your team to show, the value it brings and the reduced manual efforts and the more time back to do other things. So yeah, absolutely great. I think I'm going to get one more question in, talking about the buzz in AI and automation. Where do you think they're making a difference, and what makes you most excited for the AI and automation in the future?
I'm most excited about the potential it has for bridging the skills gap. I at one point in time I wanted to be an educator because I seen that there was still is this huge gap in where people are entry level in cybersecurity and where the apparent wizards are in cybersecurity, and then there's everybody in between. Plus, we all have a little bit of that syndrome, the imposter syndrome, where we feel like no matter how good we are, we're not as good as maybe we need to be. AI is really good at bridging that skills gap. It gives AI driven insights, which acts as a force multiplier for your junior analyst. It can translate complex telemetry into plain language. So even if maybe you're mid career or maybe you've experienced a lot already, but you don't have deep experience in one specific area, it can translate this and put it into plain language. It can suggest remediation steps. Essentially, you're leveling up a lean team without needing to hire more tier 3 analysts.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Again, it's all about simplification, removing the complexities, removing the silos, finding ways to make your life easier and to, give you priorities and time back to do other things in your day. So you're not focused on digging through all the alerts and worrying about, can I hire somebody with these skill sets when your tool can help you figure it all out on its own. So perfect. I see a few more questions have popped in. So for those of you we weren't able to get to today, we'll reach out to you directly with some answers. And Chris, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate everybody joining us today.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody. Goodbye.